Saint Nerona Imu, the king of the world, has revealed himself to the Straw Hats and to us without a silhouette, and that changes everything. For almost 8 years, he's been pulling the strings from the flower room of Pangaea Castle atop the heavens in Merry Joyce, and now he's stepping into the story in a very real way during the Elbaf arc. And honestly, this is crazy. There are 3 important things that I need to say, and as I say those things, please comment what your thoughts, responses are, and by the end we can have a proper nice dialogue and help us get to 3,000 subscribers. But let's talk about how massive of a moment this is, because we need to talk about why this moment matters so much. Imu has arrived. Elbaf was already shaping up to be a huge arc. We had the history of the giants, the mystery of the world's old age, the build up around the Holy Knights, and the echoes of God Valley hanging over the entire arc like a shadow. We had rocks, we had Roger, we had Shaki, we had everything. We had Loki. This alone would have been enough for a massive story. This alone is enough to satisfy the arc of Elbaf. But Oda, no, he didn't stop. He's like, nah. He brought Imu into the picture in a very real way, and that changed everything. Because when the ruler of the world personally enters the conflict, it means this is no longer just about an island. This is no longer just about giants. It's no longer even just about the battle on the ground. This is about the real structure of the One Piece world itself. And that's why the appearance of Imu is so important. And on to the first thing I want to say, a question. How did you react to Imu's design? Because Imu doesn't look like a normal ruler. He doesn't even look like a normal villain. There's something about the silhouette, the horns, the body shape, and the overall feeling of the design that makes it feel like Oda was trying to tell us something before a single word was spoken. And that is where the theory gets a bit crazy, because a lot of fans are saying, hey, he resembles and has traits of a lot of oppressed species in One Piece. Some are pointing out to the Lunarian-like skin. Some are seeing the Oni-like horns. Some are seeing and even wondering whether there is a hint of a third eye behind the bang of his hair. And some are just saying, mate, he doesn't even look human. And why does that matter? Because the world government has spent centuries hunting down and ostracizing certain races and bloodlines. The Lunarians, the Buccaneers, the Fishmen, the Giants. The world government has always treated these groups as if that they're beneath the proper world. So why does the person sitting at the very top of the world, the very top of the system, seem to echo those traits? And that is the kind of detail that turns a character design into a statement. Maybe Imu is not just a ruler. Maybe Imu is the physical embodiment of everything the world government tried to bury, control, and erase. Because the truth is, those races have physical characteristics or gifts that humans just don't have, or those races all come from a shared, ancient, older, ancestral bloodline, maybe from the devil himself. The next thing I want to say is more of a statement. Imu's direct involvement into the Elbaf arc is controversial. Was it needed? You can actually argue both ways, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, Elbaf was quite a stacked arc already. The island that has been hyped up for decades, with pre-time skip Usopp's involvement and Big Mom's connections. We knew Elbaf is going to be a major and a big thing. Heck, the giants are massive themselves. Not only that, we had the secrets of the world slowly being told to us through the Rocks and Herald flashback. We learn about the deep sea covenants. We learn that actually Imu gets hurt or affected when a god's knight is killed. And then linking that to the present timeline, the god's knights are involved in a combatant way into the story, and they are quite overwhelming. Not only that, one of the god's knights is being possessed by Imu. And you have Loki, you have all of these things coming to the forefront. Was Imu actually necessary? But look on the flip side. With Imu's direct involvement, you have to really ask yourself, is the story being overloaded, or is Oda deliberately telling us that Elbaf is not just another arc? And this is where the answers start to lean towards the second option. Imu's involvement makes Elbaf feel like a side battlefield and more like a direct collision between the deepest layers of the One Piece world, because this is the first time the Hidden King feels like he's moving from theory to reality. And that means this arc is not just about giants anymore. It's about the world order itself starting to crack open. So is Imu overkill? Maybe on the surface, but in storytelling points of view, no. Imu may be the only character big enough to justify the scale of what Elbaf represents. The giants are ancient, the holy knights are dangerous, the God Valley mystery is enormous, but Imu is the one that makes it feel like this story has moved from the board to the player behind the board. That is why his presence matters and is actually necessary. And you have to think, is Imu the dark opposite of Luffy? And this is where the whole idea starts to click. We already know One Piece loves its hidden identities. Luffy's fruit looked ordinary at first, but it was actually a god fruit, Hito Hito no Mi Modo Nika, hidden inside something that seemed so simple. What if Imu has that same setup? What if Imu is holding a power of another human fruit variant? Not the fruit of freedom, not the fruit of liberation, but something far more darker, far more evil. Something like a Hito Hito no Mi Modo Devil. That idea works so well because it mirrors Luffy on a symbolic level. Luffy is joy. Imu is control. Luffy is freedom. Imu is domination. Luffy is sunlight. Imu is shadow. Luffy creates hope. Imu creates fear. The contrast is exactly the kind of storytelling One Piece loves when it reaches the biggest mythological moments. And you can even argue, does this set up for Blackbeard to come into the story? But let's talk about Imu still. If Imu really does have a kind of a devil variant or a devil version of a human fruit, then it would explain why his presence feels so unnatural. It would also explain why his design feels so far removed from an ordinary human. I say that in quotes, because he may not be a man wearing a crown. He may be the thing the crown is built to protect. Now onto my final thing, and this is more of a theory, and it's probably entertaining an idea from a single detail, and that's quite dangerous. What is Imu's weakness? Because once Imu started coughing up blood, the entire conversation changed. After arriving into the castle, we see him coughing up blood. And that's not a small detail that Oda probably just put in there randomly. Everyone, I immediately first thought, wait a minute, Roger coughed up blood. And this is where the connection comes. Roger was dying from a incurable illness. The Pirate King, the man who reached the top of the world, still had a body that was failing him. So when Imu coughs up blood, the story starts asking a terrifying question. What if Imu has the same illness as Roger? What if the king of the world is also being destroyed from within? And that would be one of the most powerful parallels in the series. Roger stood at the end of the old era. Imu stands above the world in the hidden era. Roger had an illness that put a limit on his life. And if Imu does too, there's no amount of hidden power that makes him untouchable. That would mean that Imu is not invincible. He's just hidden. And those two are two different things. Hidden power can still fail. It's just that no one would know about it. Dragon didn't even know about Imu's existence until Sabo told him. Now let's take it one step further. Why was it so risky for Imu to descend to the lower realm? Why were the elders so hesitant? Terrified, in fact. And that detail is the most interesting part of this entire situation. A character as powerful as Imu, and he can't go down to the lower realm? This character who can supposedly provide immortality to the gods' knights is supposedly immortal himself, yet he is at risk or is in some real danger when he descends to the lower realm. There must be a real cost attached to his body or his power. And that leads me to a very compelling idea. What if Imu becomes more and more mortal the lower he goes, more human? What if his power is strongest at the top, in the heavens, in Merry Joyce, above the world, but weakens as he descends to the lower realm, closer to the sea? This would fit the symbolism perfectly. The ruler above the world is powerful only when he's separated from the world. But once he comes down, once he gets closer to the sea, once he gets closer to people he rules over, he starts to lose that divine distance. he becomes vulnerable, he becomes physical, he becomes human. And if that's true, then the warning from the elders makes total sense. They were not just afraid of the risk, they were afraid of what happens to the so-called God when he has to enter the world of man. That could explain the blood. Why is he bleeding? Because maybe the moment Imu starts descending, his body becomes to reject his divinity. Is he even divine, or is he just simply a demon? And that makes his entire existence feel like a balancing act between divinity and decay. Now, with all of these things that I've put forward to you, I need your thoughts and feelings because there's still more to talk about. But let's focus on these three things. His design that showcases everything that we've seen the world government reject or hate seems to be Imu. What the hell? His involvement in Elbaf makes you wonder, was it even needed? Because Elbaf was enough already, and also take into account in Egghead, the 5 elders were put into play. It does make you question, respectfully, Oda, did you sequence it wrong? Could you have done it better? And the final theory is, does Imu have the same illness as Roger? Is his weakness from that illness, or is it from the descent closer to the sea that makes him more mortal? And are we setting up for Blackbeard to do the heist of the millennia?